This is Montreal's cheese grater, the Chateau Champlain. Join me for 3 nights inside the final Grand Railway hotel built in Canada a century ago. From some of the biggest hidden gems in Montreal, the stories of over a century that led to its completion, the outstanding accommodations here, and how 2 chefs have single-handedly turned this into one of Montreal's greatest culinary experiences. Last summer, I started a series to stay at as many of Canada's Grand Railway hotels as possible, all of which were built in an era when passenger trains ruled the Rockies. The Jasper Park Lodge, the Banff Springs, the Palliser Hotel in Calgary, the Bessborough in Saskatoon, the Fort Garry in Winnipeg. I stayed at all of them. But Montreal is where it all started, and this is going to be one of the most unique experiences I've done in this series of all the railway hotels to date. But to tell the story from the beginning, we need to rewind the clock back over 2 centuries ago. The year 1878 saw the Windsor Hotel built in Montreal, and when the Canadian Pacific would complete their Atlantic to Pacific route via their coast-to-coast railway in 1885, they would complete the Windsor Station here in Montreal in 1889, the connection to the hotel just across the street. And the hotel was a smashing success with locals, and the Canadian Pacific were so inspired by the success story, they opted to test their luck and build their own hotels across their new route. This would include the Banff Springs Hotel, Glacier House outside of Revelstoke, BC, the Chalet Lake Louise, and Mount Stephen House and Field. They were all monumental in attracting tourists to come and explore west into the untouched Rockies of Canada. The Chateau Frontenac would open up in Quebec City in 1893, the original Hotel Vancouver in 1898, Place Vigier here in Montreal in 1899, and the Royal Alexandra Hotel in Winnipeg in 1906, all of which would connect the Transcontinental Railway with beautiful luxurious hotels at all the major stops along the way. Now, Montreal was Canada's biggest city at the time, and when the 1920s saw every single railway except the Canadian Pacific go belly up and absorb into a new government-operated Canadian National Railways, CN would open a brand new passenger station here following the war. But World War II would put a little bit of a halt to that, and it would only open in 1943 after almost 2 decades of construction. And following World War II, their focus was new railway hotels, from the Hotel Vancouver, which we know today, to the Bessborough in Saskatoon. In 1953 saw CN announce plans to build Montreal's newest hotel, the Queen Elizabeth, and she would open in 1958. Now, a year earlier in 1957, a fire would destroy a third of the Windsor Hotel, and in 1959, the hotel would be demolished, and the attention would turn to a new hotel, and in 1963, Canadian Pacific President Buck Crump would announce plans for what would become Canada's finest and final railway hotel, and in September of 1964, they would break ground across the street from Windsor Station. Now, the original plan was for 2 twin-tower hotels, but due to budget costs, the concept was trimmed down to a single tower, and after 2.5 years of construction, on January 11th, 1967, just before the start of Expo 67 in Montreal, the hotel was complete. Towering 450 feet, 40 floors tall, it would become Canada's tallest hotel at the time of completion, and almost 60 years later, it still reigns as Montreal's tallest hotel to date. Now, Crump, a lot like myself, was a huge history nerd and had a deep admiration for the father of New France, Samuel de Champlain. And what better way to honor Canada's roots than by naming the hotel after the man responsible for so much of its history, and would therefore name the new hotel the Chateau Champlain. Hosting just shy of 600 guest rooms and 19 suites, although the design does get a little bit of hate from locals for looking like a giant cheese grater with a giant block of brie cheese on top, which is kind of interesting because if you know anything about the culinary arts, you don't exactly grate brie cheese, but I get where they were going with that. But the story is that the arches of the hotel's design were designed to mirror the shape of Windsor Station, blending the latest railway hotel to the heritage of Canada's oldest passenger station still in service at the time. Now fast forward to 1988, the Canadian Pacific bought up almost all of Canadian National's railway hotels, including here and the Queen Elizabeth across the street. And once they acquired the Queen E, they sold the Champlain to Marriott Hotels in 1991. And fast forward to here in 2025, that brings us to my experience inside of one of Montreal's most recognizable landmarks and hotels, the Chateau Champlain. Our story starts here in Vancouver, where we would board the train heading east into the Rocky Mountains in Jasper, continuing through the heart of the prairies into Winnipeg, Manitoba, and after 2 days through the forests of northern Ontario, we would arrive 7 hours late into Toronto. Now, our train was so late that it would force us to miss our connection to Montreal, and although one last night in Montreal did suck, one night on the house from Via Rail at the Royal York in Toronto didn't. And the following morning, we would head back into Union Station, into the business lounge, and trust me, those lounge espressos are strong, as you can see here. And we would head out of the great station, board our train destined for Montreal, from the second last railway hotel built by the Canadian Pacific at the Royal York, to the final one here at the Chateau Champlain in Montreal, with a fantastic visual of the Montreal skyline not far behind. And see that building with the white wheel of cheese on top? That's our home for the next 3 nights. We would pull into Montreal Central Station, and after a short walk down the street, we were walking up the steps of the Chateau Champlain for a quick check-in up to the 31st floor for our home for 3 nights here in Montreal. Oh, wow. This is nice. Look at that. Now, of course, this video is about the Chateau Champlain, but the railway hotels were built to import tourism to Canada and its most worthy cities. So I want to highlight 4 absolute hidden gems worthy of going completely out of your way for here in Montreal. And it starts off at the Old Port of Montreal, specifically here at Bota Bota, Montreal's premier floating Nordic spa. Bota Bota actually started off as a passenger ferry in the 1950s and would later be converted to a floating movie theater, but at the turn of the 21st century, the current owners would purchase it, and after some structural touch-ups, 2010 would see the vessel anchored at the Port of Montreal, and in December of that year, Montreal's newest spa would open its doors. And Bota Bota literally has everything you could possibly want, from a blissful outdoor hot tub facing the skyline of Old Montreal, to the multiple saunas that they have facing in both directions, but my personal favorite is their water circuit that has a cold tub outside on the starboard side of the deck, which I absolutely loved, especially as the sun was coming down to hit my skin out of the water. And they also have an indoor cold tub if that's more your style, which had a little bit more space for me to fit in, considering just I'm a very large human being. And when you're done, you hit the hammock, decompress and relax a little bit. All in all, I cannot recommend Bota Bota enough. You have to come here and experience probably the biggest hidden gem in all of Montreal. Now, the next hidden gem in Montreal is actually just a short couple-minute walk away from Bota Bota. And to be honest, I don't think you can say that you love Montreal without stopping at the Grande Roue, which is Montreal's Ferris wheel. And I'll be honest, listen, I'm absolutely terrified of heights, but it's actually pretty cool being on top of all of Montreal. And hey, you see that Zamboni down there? That's actually the next hidden gem, because you can actually skate there. We would head down, put my jets on, put on Bella skates as well, and help her tie them up, because, you know, she's not great at tying her skates, and as much as she loves when I tie them up, I also love doing them for her. So after that, we would try not to fall and head down to the port. Safe to say that we have definitely made some progress in her skating, and I'm super proud of her, but there's still a little bit more room to go. So I'll keep you posted on that as time goes on. Now, for the next hidden gem, this could not be an episode on the Railway Hotels of Canada without a bit of history and a whole lot of steam. The Expo Rail Museum in Montreal has the biggest, most diverse inventory of railway memorabilia anywhere in Canada. From the original passenger coaches the passengers traveled on at the turn of the 20th century, to some baggage, which, to be honest, I was kind of hoping to find some cash in, but came up a little bit empty here. But check this out. This is 2850, the Royal Hudson, the exact steam locomotive that pulled King George and the Royals across Canada during the war tour of 1939. And the King, who, a lot like myself, was a huge rail fan, spent a decent amount of time riding in the cab that we are actually in right now. The museum even has the original passenger benches from inside Ottawa Union Station, which stopped serving passengers in 1966. And of course, that will be a big focus in next week's episode, and I'll cover it more in depth the Chateau Laurier. And last but not least, CN 5702, a mammoth of a steam locomotive that you can see right here hauling passengers out of Montreal's Windsor Station and into Toronto outside the Royal York, which was the focus of last week's video. Now, these pictures are dated roughly sometime in the late 1930s, but following service, she was restored into her original color scheme and put on display here in Montreal. I think it's safe to say that if you love history or if you love steam, this is an absolute must-do in Montreal, and to be honest, it really makes me want to experience a steam locomotive, but if you're in Montreal, you have to visit the Montreal Expo Rail Museum. Now, back in Montreal, the Chateau Champlain's famous design, like I mentioned earlier, was meant to blend with that of Windsor Station next door. And the station itself is a real historical hidden gem. When you walk into the station, you're walking into the same station that countless immigrants came through to a new life in Canada from a corrupt Europe. Not to mention the brave men that made the ultimate sacrifice and left their loved ones here in this very station, as you see here, many of which never end up getting a return ticket. And the station features a bronze statue in the waiting room, put in memory of the over 1,000 Canadian Pacific Railway employees and Canadian patriots that made the ultimate sacrifice in World War I. And that statue has two other replicas actually throughout Canada. The second was in Winnipeg at the Canadian Pacific Station on Higgins Avenue, and the third is outside the former Canadian Pacific Waterfront Station in Vancouver. And this statue saw history repeat itself again 20 years later, watching countless men walk out the doors to World War II. And this station even has the original schedule board that serves today as a memorial to when the station hosted dozens of passenger trains a day, including daily departures of the transcontinental route. I mean, just look at how full that board must have been during the golden era of passenger rail travel. Now, on the sad news, this station is no longer in service for long-distance passenger trains and would see its last Canadian Pacific passenger train in 1978 and the final Via Rail train in 1986. The Canadian Pacific would sell the land where the tracks once were and would then become today's present home of the Montreal Canadiens, the Bell Centre. Now, quite frankly, I do think that the Leafs probably have a better chance of winning a cup than a passenger train ever returning here, but this station, it built Canada, and it built the same Canada that we have today. And the final hidden gem in this list is actually in the station. It's daily mail service, and it's still a thing, and it dates back to when trains were the official mail carrier across Canada. And today, you can still use it for free. So the night before, I would end up writing a letter back home to Vancouver for Bella to get when she gets home from this trip. Just let her know how much she means to me, how special it's been to share this coast-to-coast experience together for the last 2 weeks, the same way people did over a century ago, and ultimately just how much she means to me. Now, what about the chateau itself? Well, how about the nicest suite in the building? This is the presidential suite, the grandest and tallest hotel suite in all of Montreal. From a larger-than-life living room, a walk-in bathroom with a bidet that I absolutely loved, by the way. The hotel has bidets in here.
Oh, God! Holy...
I think you're enjoying that a little bit too much, babe.
Highly recommend. A king-size bed, a panorama view of Canada's most cultured city, and food-wise, the Chateau may actually be the most creative spot I've seen to date in this series. So this right here is where all the magic happens in the kitchen. And this is Chef Kevin. He studied the culinary arts over in France and is breaking out all the stops here. From the Bellevue Terrace, which in winter is a winter patio with warm drinks, and a menu specifically designed to be eaten with mitts on in the middle of that harsh winter. All the seats have cozy fireplaces and blankets with a great view of Windsor Station next door, and although in summer it transforms into a summer patio with live music, I kind of like the winter patio concept idea. And my sandwich alone with the Montreal smoked meat, gherkins, onions, cheese, and the fantastic crispy bread may quite possibly be the best sandwich. Actually, no, it is the best sandwich I have ever had in my life. Now, Bella, she opted for the cheesy potatoes, which, listen, they're surprisingly dangerous. I could have polished off an entire bucket myself. But the real star of the show is downstairs at their signature restaurant, Lloyd, named in honor of Frank Lloyd, who is the architect who inspired the Chateau's cheese grater design. From short rib sliders, breakfast skillets, avocado on toast, or their peanut-crusted chicken fingers, because, listen, if you've seen the series, you know Bella loves chicken fingers like nobody I've ever seen in my life. Chef Kevin has executed a phenomenal menu, and whether it's him giving me an exclusive test run of their lobster flambé dish that was on offer for Valentine's Day, or Chef Sylvain, who is also from France, who is making his own chocolate bars in-house that the hotel sells. And listen, I love creme brulee. I do believe it is the GOAT of desserts, undisputed. But goddamn, Chef has crafted this tiramisu that was voted one of the top 10 dishes in all of Montreal. And I can attest firsthand. I like tiramisu, but I'm not the biggest advocate of it. This tiramisu that they have at the Chateau Champlain, I legit could have filled up my suitcase with 20 of them and taken them back on the train to Ottawa. It was that good. Chef, do not stop what you're doing. And I hope that any other chefs in Montreal that see this, or any chefs Canada-wide that see this, get inspired, because a rising tide raises all ships. And to Chef Kevin and Chef Sylvain, These guys are doing a magnificent job, and considering that I've been in a food coma for pretty much all of this journey, I needed a nap after, and my sleep has improved dramatically since I switched to today's video sponsor, Manta Sleep. The Manta Pro Sleep Mask makes it easier to fall asleep anywhere, anytime, guaranteed. And whether you're sleeping on a moving train like I was in this series, or the countless hotels along the way, I mean, look at Bella. If you had come down from Mars and had no idea what was going on, you would have sworn she was hibernating for the winter. And the Manta Pro Sleep Mask that I'm using here has true 100% blackout, unmatched breathability, zero pressure on your eyes, and it is engineered for anybody that likes to sleep on their side. And it's also got an anti-slip strip. And if you're still on the fence for some reason, I'm going to make it even easier for you by getting you 10% off your Manta Sleep Mask today when you click the first link in the video description and use my code TRAV, that is my name, TRAV, for 10% off, the best night's sleep money can buy. And thank you so much to Manta Sleep for making this video possible. Get a sleep mask today. To sum it up, this was my first real experience in Montreal, but goddamn, I loved every minute of it. The city is amazing, and most importantly, the hotel in the Chateau Champlain that did exactly what the Canadian Pacific designed it to do a century ago. It brought me to Montreal to experience the best, from the people to the culture, some seriously must-do tourist activities that are great for winter or summer seasons, to a phenomenal culinary experience on offer here, and easily my favorite hotel rooms to date in the series, with a bidet. And listen, I love the famous curved cheese grater windows. If you're in Montreal, you have to stay here, dine here, and experience some of the hidden gems that I've documented in this video, which I'll put all in the video description down below if you want to check them out. This series is my love letter to Canada and the railways that built it. I'm traveling across Canada, by train, rewinding the clock to capture an experience and share the stories of over a century ago before they're forgotten forever, along with some hidden gems nestled along the way. Have you ever stayed at the cheese grater? Do you have a story about the Chateau Champlain? Whatever it is, leave in the comments because I would love to hear it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss next week's episode in Ottawa at the Chateau Laurier for an experience that could possibly top this one. Obviously, you'll have to stay tuned to find out or see any of the other episodes in this series. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.